Sleek and spacious new streetcars for Toronto. But one question, are they worth the $1.2 billion price tag? Also, Marcus G rates each candidate's public transit plan. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Welcome to Globe Now. Streetcars in Toronto are getting an upgrade. They will start rolling out on select routes on August 31st. This is the first time in decades that the TTC has renewed its fleet. Well, Oliver Moore is the Globe's urban transportation reporter, and he's gotten the full tour. Welcome, Oliver.
Hi, Affan.
You've seen the streetcars. What's it like?
Well, I think if you're a streetcar fan, you're going to love these streetcars. Even if you don't care whether it's a streetcar or any other form of transit, it's going to be an improvement for sure. They're bigger, they're faster, they're quieter. They have air conditioning, which is going to be pretty sweet for a couple of months of the year. And they have all-door boarding, which is going to make it faster to get on and off, which means you're less hanging around, getting to your destination more quickly.
So walk me through the hope that these streetcars represent. What's the thinking behind them? Well,
there's two things, really. One is that the streetcars are real workhorses in Toronto. They carry a lot of people, and they're crowded. Mm-hmm. These streetcars are a lot bigger. That's one thing they're going to be tackling is the capacity issue. They're going to be carrying more people faster. And the other one is that our streetcars, they're old. Mm-hmm. They're getting old and getting older. It's been decades since we had new streetcars. And to give you an example how old they are, there's actually a blacksmith on staff at the TDC who makes parts for the streetcars that they either can't get elsewhere or are really hard to find elsewhere. Okay. So they're getting pretty long in the tooth, and they're not going to last forever.
It's a huge financial investment, and there are going to be a lot of naysayers. What do you say to those naysayers who wonder whether it's worth it?
Well, there's always the crowd that says we should have buses instead. And right. It's a pretty intense argument even within the transit community of streetcars or buses. And the third crowd that says they both have their place. Certainly when you talk to the TDC, they'll point out that if you put buses for every streetcar, they'd be 3 to 1. Mm-hmm. So you'd have a lot of buses in traffic. There'd be a lot more pollution. The operator costs would be higher because you have 3 drivers instead of 1 driver. And if you look at something like Queen Street, there'd be a bus turning up every 45 seconds, every minute. Maybe not great if you're sitting on a patio. Great if you're a passenger, perhaps, but there are definitely downsides to buses as well.
Okay, so when it comes to streetcars, what people say is they're slow, they're overcrowded, they're infrequent. In terms of using streetcars to their full effect, how well is Toronto doing?
There's 40% more capacity in these streetcars. So if you're waiting for a streetcar, you may have to wait a bit longer because there's fewer streetcars, but you're much more likely to find a space. Probably the next big improvement or the big change, which may be too politically difficult to do, is dedicated lanes. If you don't have to contest with traffic, you'll be going more quickly. Right. And you can make the argument that I know this is controversial in Toronto, but you can just make the equity argument and say, look at King Street. 60,000 people ride the King streetcar. There's maybe 25,000 people in private cars. Based on those numbers alone, forget the politics, forget everything else, you could say, maybe the streetcar deserves its own lane.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Oliver Moore. Well, we want to hear from you. What's your biggest streetcar pet peeve? Tweet us at Globe Now. Staying with public transit always going to be a hot button election issue. No surprise there. And candidates are pitching all kinds of plans and solutions, and it can be confusing. So Toronto columnist Marcus G breaks it all down for you.
Transit is really a crucial issue in this campaign. Everybody's talking about it. Congestion on the roads is getting out of control. The question is how to fix it, what kind of transit, and how do we pay for it? Rob Ford is all about the subways. He wants a Scarborough subway, the Shepherd Avenue subway, the Finch subway, and finally he wants a downtown relief line. He would approach the federal and provincial governments and ask them to pitch in more. Both of them are facing financing problems of their own. So it's a very high hurdle for him to get over in terms of funding. Olivia Chow focuses very much on the here and now. She says we have to improve local service, particularly bus service, and she would invest in that. She would do away with the Scarborough subway and go back to the original plan, which is to build a light rail line. The danger for Olivia Chow is that by advocating against the Scarborough subway, she could lose votes out there. Some people in Scarborough feel downtown gets all the transit, we need a subway. Well, John Tory has quite a unique and arresting plan. He would build something that he calls Smart Track. He would use existing GO Transit lines to create a kind of surface subway. He has a financing plan that relies on something called tax increment financing. When you build transit, property values tend to increase around the stations in particular. And you rake off the additional money you get in property taxes and use it to pay off the loan you took to build the subway in the first place. The danger is the development doesn't come through, then you're left on the hook for repaying those loans. I mean, anybody can kind of draw lines on a map, and that's what politicians have been doing for a long time, saying they'd build this line, that line. The question is really, how do you raise the money for it? Can you get these billions that are necessary out of government's pockets, out of the money they get now, or do you need new taxes, tolls, and so on to raise that money? These questions are really not being looked at very closely because nobody wants to propose taxes or road tolls, for instance.
Well, that's all for today's show. Keep an eye out for the Saturday edition of the Globe and Mail, where there'll be more coverage of the new streetcars and the debate around public transit. Watch for it this weekend. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Thanks for watching.